There is a belief buried so deeply inside you that you rarely question it. It whispers when you fail, when you hesitate, when you compare yourself to others. The belief is this: you are broken, and your life is a project of repair. Think about how much of what you've done has revolved around that hidden assumption. The diets, the new routines, the long promises to finally change. All of it driven by the hope that if you can fix yourself, you'll finally be enough. But pause here. Where did this belief come from? Were you born with the idea that something in you was defective? Or was it taught to you, fed to you, reinforced until it felt like truth? From childhood, the messages arrive in small, cutting moments. The look of disappointment from a parent, the comparison to a sibling who seems to do better, the teasing that makes you want to shrink into invisibility. None of these moments seem large on their own, but together they form a cage. The child doesn't think, "I did something wrong." The child thinks, "I am something wrong." This is how the cycle begins. By the time you are old enough to try to take control of your life, you're already running from an invisible enemy, the feeling of being fundamentally flawed. Entire industries thrive on this. Self-help empires, fitness gurus, productivity coaches. Each of them profits by reminding you of the same underlying story, that who you are today is inadequate, and who you must become is always just out of reach. So you chase improvement like a shadow, never catching it, never arriving. And the tragedy is that the more you try to fix yourself, the deeper the wound becomes. Every failed attempt, every relapse, every broken promise reinforces the original belief: I am broken. But let's turn the question on its head. What if you were never broken? What if this entire structure of self-repair was built on a falsehood, an implanted idea that benefits everyone but you? Because the truth is harsh but liberating. You are not a problem waiting for a solution. You are a force that has been taught to doubt itself. And once you see that, the lie begins to crumble. This is where the path shifts. Because the point is not to fix yourself. The point is to understand who taught you to think you needed fixing in the first place, and to finally reclaim the power that shame has stolen. Shame is not just another emotion. It is not like anger, which flares and fades. It is not like sadness, which can be soothed. Shame is different. It is parasitic. It clings, seeps into identity, and convinces you that your very being is defective. Where guilt says, "I did something wrong," shame whispers, "I am something wrong." And once that whisper takes root, it alters everything. The way you carry yourself, the risks you refuse to take, the silence you keep when you should speak. It is not just a feeling, it is a system of control. Notice how shame operates. It thrives in secrecy. You hide the parts of yourself you believe are unworthy. You disguise them with masks, the polite smile, the humble deflection, the obsessive effort to appear acceptable. The world sees a version of you that has been edited, sanitized, but underneath, the thought persists. If they saw the real me, they would leave. This is why shame is so powerful. It isolates you, even in a crowded room. It convinces you that your struggle is unique, that no one else is carrying the same hidden weight. And in that isolation, shame grows stronger because there is no light, no exposure, no counter-narrative. Think back. How many times have you swallowed words you wanted to say, afraid they would reveal too much? How many opportunities have you sabotaged, not because you lacked ability, but because you believed you were unworthy of them. Shame does not need chains. It only needs your silence. And yet, here lies the cruel brilliance. Shame keeps you striving. It makes you chase validation, success, approval, all in the hope that if you achieve enough, the gnawing belief of brokenness will finally go quiet. But no achievement silences it for long, because shame is not healed by more fixing. Shame feeds on the attempt itself. The result is exhaustion. You live as if on trial, constantly presenting evidence of your worth. A new achievement, a new discipline, a new improvement. Each one a desperate plea for acquittal. But the verdict never changes. The judge is not outside. It is the voice within, inherited from 1,000 small humiliations, still declaring, "You are not enough." This is the hidden prison. Not the mistakes you've made, but the identity you've been tricked into carrying. And until you see it clearly, every attempt at self-improvement will only tighten the bars. Machiavelli lived in a world of ruthless politics, where survival was never guaranteed and power could be lost overnight. He understood something most people resist. Perfection is not only impossible, it is irrelevant. What mattered was how you used what you had, even the parts condemned as flaws. A prince, he wrote, should not concern himself with being loved for his purity. He should concern himself with being effective. Cruelty, when necessary, could establish stability. Deception, when wielded carefully, could protect the state. Even vices, properly directed, could become weapons. This is not a call to embrace corruption blindly. It is a reminder that what is labeled a defect can, in the right context, become an advantage. The very traits you've been taught to be ashamed of may be the traits that could serve you best, if you stop treating them as infections to be removed. Think of your so-called flaws, your intensity, your stubbornness, your refusal to play by certain rules. These qualities have probably brought you criticism. Maybe they've cost you opportunities. But ask yourself, are they weaknesses, or are they raw power you haven't yet learned to channel? Shame insists that you must file these edges down until nothing dangerous remains. But Machiavelli's lesson is clear. Edges cut. And in a world that constantly seeks to dull you, a sharpened edge is exactly what creates leverage. This is why the project of fixing yourself is endless. Because what you call fixing is often just disguising your weapons, disarming yourself for the comfort of others. You silence your aggression instead of learning to focus it. You smother your ambition instead of letting it propel you. You hide your difference instead of using it to stand apart. And while you work tirelessly to sand yourself smooth, the world takes advantage. Others, less ashamed, wield their flaws openly, bending rules, seizing space, shaping outcomes. They may not be more talented, they may not be more deserving, but they refuse to waste their lives apologizing for who they are. And that refusal itself is power. Machiavelli would have recognized the trap immediately. A population convinced it must be good above all else is a population that will remain docile. A person convinced they are broken will never rise to threaten the order that benefits from their obedience. So the question becomes, will you keep sanding yourself down in search of an impossible perfection? Or will you begin to ask how your so-called flaws might be sharpened into tools of your own strategy? Shame is not just personal, it is political. It is not only an inner wound, but an outer weapon. From the earliest years of life, you are trained through shame to remain manageable, predictable, and safe to those in power. Parents use it to control children. Teachers use it to discipline classrooms. Religions have perfected it for centuries, warning that hidden thoughts and private desires make you unworthy. And today, entire industries rely on it, selling you products, programs, and promises, all designed to relieve a pain they themselves keep alive. This is why shame rarely dissolves on its own. It is constantly reinforced. The advertisements that tell you your body is not good enough, the institutions that preach your desires are sinful, the influencers who insist your life is behind schedule, each one tightening the leash, whispering, "Fix yourself, or you don't deserve to belong." Think about what this produces: a society of people obsessed with self-repair. Not a society of rebels, but of compliant workers. Not individuals who threaten authority, but individuals who are too busy chasing approval to notice how their energy is being drained. Machiavelli, in his ruthless clarity, would have seen the brilliance in this design. Why rule with force when you can rule with shame? Why waste resources crushing rebellion when you can convince people they don't deserve to rebel? A man who believes he is broken polices himself. He keeps himself small. He asks for permission, and he never realizes that the permission he seeks was never necessary. This is the genius of shame. It creates obedience without visible chains. It keeps people chasing perfection, not power. It convinces you that your problem is you, so you never question the systems that profit from your doubt. And so you spend your days sanding down your edges, while others sharpen theirs. You silence your voice, while others weaponize theirs. You apologize for existing, while others use every part of who they are to climb higher. This is why trying to fix yourself feels endless, because the brokenness was never yours. It was planted. Planted so that you would exhaust yourself trying to prove worth to people who benefit from your exhaustion. And as long as you believe the lie, the cycle continues. You remain a prisoner who guards his own cell, believing the lock is unbreakable, never noticing the door was never locked at all. If shame imprisons you through comparison and performance, then solitude is the first step toward freedom. Because it is in solitude that the cycle of fixing begins to lose its grip. When the audience disappears, so does the endless need to perform for it. Think about the moments in your life when you've been alone, truly alone. Not scrolling, not distracting, but silent, unobserved, without the eyes of others judging you. In those moments, the lies of shame begin to weaken, because shame depends on an audience, even an imagined one. Take away the audience, and you begin to see yourself as you are, not as you've been told to be. But solitude is not easy. At first, it feels unbearable, because all the voices you've been running from finally rise to the surface. The accusations, the reminders of failure, the voice that says you are not enough. This is why so many people fear being alone, because without distraction, shame finally speaks at full volume. But if you stay, if you endure, something shifts. You begin to notice that the voice is not truly yours. It carries the tone of your parents, your teachers, your culture, your enemies. It is a collection of borrowed echoes, not a reflection of your essence. And once you see that, the voice begins to lose its authority. This is the turning point, because the more comfortable you become in solitude, the more dangerous you become outside of it. A person who does not fear being alone cannot be manipulated with the threat of exclusion. A person who can sit with their imperfections cannot be bribed with shallow validation. Machiavelli understood that isolation was both a risk and a resource. Leaders exiled from power often returned sharper, less entangled in illusions, more capable of decisive action. Solitude stripped them of false friends, revealed the fragility of appearances, and left only what was real. For the individual, the same principle applies. When you stop fearing your own company, you stop needing to trade your integrity for belonging. This is why solitude is not emptiness. It is weaponry. It gives you clarity others lack. It gives you the strength to act without begging for approval. And most importantly, it reveals that the parts of you you've been taught to fix are not defects to erase, but truths to wield. To sit with yourself is to see yourself. And to see yourself clearly is the first act of rebellion against the lie that you are broken. Solitude strips away illusions, but clarity alone is not enough. The next step is transformation, the recognition that what you've been taught to bury can become your sharpest edge. Consider the traits you've labeled as flaws, your intensity, which others call too much, your sensitivity, which others dismiss as weakness, your ambition, which others warn will make you selfish. Each one has been shamed, diminished, treated as something to apologize for. But ask yourself, what if these qualities were never defects? What if they were raw materials, unrefined, yes, but powerful? Machiavelli wrote that it is better for a ruler to be feared than loved, if he cannot be both. He knew that seeking universal approval was a trap. Because in seeking to please everyone, you lose the ability to act decisively. The same applies to you. By trying to smooth every edge, to appear harmless and acceptable, you drain yourself of the very qualities that could cut through obstacles. Think of stubbornness. In the wrong context, it is inflexibility. But when directed toward your vision, it becomes resilience, the refusal to bend when others fold. Think of anger. Left uncontrolled, it corrodes, but harnessed, it fuels courage, pushing you to act when fear would keep you frozen. Even envy, often despised, can be reshaped into ambition, the recognition of what you truly desire, stripped of pretense. This is the pivot shame has always sought to prevent. Because once you learn to wield what you were told to hide, you stop being manageable. A compliant person buries their aggression. A dangerous person channels it. A compliant person hides their difference. A dangerous person makes it their signature. Notice how the narrative of fixing yourself keeps you in circles. You spend years trying to erase the very qualities that could set you apart. And while you waste energy sanding yourself smooth, others sharpen their edges openly and rise. They are not more whole than you. They are simply less ashamed. The truth is this: every so-called flaw carries within it a potential use. The world will call it wrong until the day you turn it into a weapon. And on that day, the same people who once criticized you will call it strength. This is not about embracing chaos blindly. It is about refusing to keep disarming yourself. Your flaws are not infections. They are blades. And the sooner you learn to hold them, the less you will need to beg for protection. By now, the pattern should be clear. The demand to fix yourself is not just bad advice. It is a trap designed to keep you small. And the only way out is rebellion. Rebellion does not mean chaos for its own sake. It means refusing the terms of the contract you never agreed to. It means seeing that every institution, every ad, every authority that profits from your shame only survives if you keep believing you are broken. Once you see this, something shifts. You begin to notice how often people around you are performing obedience. The colleague who overworks not because they want to, but because they fear being exposed as inadequate. The friend who shapes their personality around whoever they're with, terrified of rejection. The endless cycle of apologies, excuses, and self-effacing jokes, all of them signals of hidden shame. But here is the dangerous truth. You don't have to play. The moment you stop trying to fix yourself, you stop feeding the machine. You no longer buy what you don't need to prove worth. You no longer beg for validation from people who are just as trapped as you. You no longer surrender your power to those who built their authority on your insecurity. Machiavelli understood that order is maintained not by justice, but by perception. People obey because they believe they are weak, flawed, or powerless. Change that belief, and the entire order trembles. That is why shame has always been the most reliable tool of rulers. It convinces you to kneel without ever being asked. Rebellion, then, is not loud at first. It begins quietly, almost invisibly. It begins the moment you say, "I will not apologize for who I am. I will not waste my life polishing myself into acceptability. I will not obey a voice that was never mine. And make no mistake, this defiance will be noticed. The world is unsettled by those who no longer beg for repair. You may lose the approval of some. You may be judged, mocked, even feared. But these are the exact signs that you are no longer chained. Because the world only feels safe around the obedient. And obedience is exactly what you are leaving behind. To stop fixing yourself is not passivity. It is the fiercest act of rebellion. It is to stand in a world built on shame and declare, "I was never broken. I refuse your cure." The greatest illusion of all is that you are a problem waiting for a solution. And once that illusion is broken, the world can never control you in the same way again. Look back at the years you've spent chasing repair, the books, the routines, the endless self-criticism. What did it bring you but exhaustion? You've been running in circles, not because you lacked strength, but because you believed the lie that strength required fixing first. But you were never broken. You were only taught to doubt, and doubt is not truth. It is a weapon turned against you. Now comes the question, what will you do with the parts of yourself you once tried to erase? The aggression you buried, the desires you hid, the voice you silenced. Will you keep them locked away, or will you begin to sharpen them into the tools they were always meant to be? Machiavelli would tell you, stop striving for goodness in the eyes of others. It is not purity that wins, but clarity. It is not flawlessness that leads to power, but the ruthless honesty of using everything you are, light and dark, without apology. This is the edge most people never reach. They spend their lives polishing masks, terrified of rejection, desperate to appear acceptable. But masks crack, perfection collapses, and all that remains in the end is the raw self you tried so hard to hide. Imagine what changes when you stop hiding now, when you stop apologizing, when you stop sanding down every edge. The world that once fed on your shame no longer knows how to control you. Opportunities appear where before you only saw obstacles. Respect follows where before you begged for scraps. And most of all, a quiet strength rises, the kind that does not need fixing because it never needed it to begin with. This is not an easy path. It will make you unsettling to those who still live chained to shame. But unsettling is power. Unapologetic presence is power. And nothing is more magnetic than a person who refuses to see themselves as broken. So hear this clearly. Stop trying to fix yourself. Stop treating your life like a wound to be healed. You were never broken. What you call flaws are your weapons. What you call weakness is your edge. And the moment you embrace that, you stop living as a prisoner and start living as a force the world can no longer contain.